Who likes the game of chess? Hours and hours of fun, depending how you play it. And in the game of chess, as you know, of all the pieces in the chess game, the two most important pieces are what? The king and the queen. You got to capture the king to win, but the queen has the ultimate movement around the board. Even though the king is the one you've got to capture, he can only move one space at a time, but the queen can go any direction she likes. And today, I think it's an excellent example of the book of Esther and the selfless courage and the divine deliverance through a woman who was used by God in a book that never mentions God. Good morning, Pastor Rini. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. Hope you're having an incredible morning. As we come to the end of the year and into the holiday season, I pray health upon your families. And in the book of Esther, we're in chapters 3 and 4. Let's just do a quick, simple recap. We know this book of Esther is about the Jews approximately 100 years after the Babylonian exile. Remember, the Persians took out the Babylonians, and many Jews preferred to stay in Persia. And the main king of the day was the king of Persia, and then his right-hand man, Haman, who was an Agagite, or we know them as a Canaanite, and Haman was a declared enemy of the Jews. And then we have Mordecai, who adopted an orphan girl named Esther, who was Jewish. So these are all the main players of the story. And as we know, the king of Persia's wife kind of shunned him, and she wouldn't go to the functions with him. So he held a beauty pageant to find a new wife, and the woman that was chosen was a beautiful young woman named Esther, who hid her Jewish heritage and then became the queen of Persia. Now things go from that moment to really bad because Haman, who was the king's right-hand man, who was a declared enemy of the Jews, was angry because Mordecai, the Jew, would not bow down before him when he walked by. So he had this huge ego as the right-hand man of the king and despised all the Jews because they would not bow down before anyone but their God. So let me pick up the story in chapter 3 and start in verse 12. And this is what Haman did because of his anger against Mordecai and that he wouldn't bow down. He wanted to destroy him and all Jews. It says, "Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an edict, according to all that Haman had commanded, was written to the king's satraps and to the governors over all the provinces and the officials of all the peoples, to every province in its own script and every people in its own language. It was written in the name of the king of Persia, Ahasuerus, and sealed with the king's signet ring. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, and with instruction to, listen now, with instruction from the king to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods." So basically, they determined through, believe it or not, the rolling of dice, a date, which was 11 months from that time, and they were going to carry out in 11 months the complete destruction of every Jew. The document was to be issued as a decree to every province by proclamation to all the peoples, and to be ready for that day. The couriers went out hurriedly by order of the king, and the decree was issued in Susa, the citadel, which was the capital of Persia, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was thrown into confusion. So the king definitely had an alcohol-infused decision-making process. And several times in this book, alcohol was involved with the king. He obviously loved drinking, loved to get drunk, and made some very poor decisions and was easily swayed in that drunken state to do good or bad things. Not a good thing for a leader to do. So in this alcohol-fused decision, they rolled dice and decided to let Haman kill all Jews because they served a God that was not the king of Persia, and they wouldn't bow down to Haman. And of course, it was really just a way of getting back at Mordecai, because Haman hated the Jews. Now, chapter 4, let's pick it up, chapter 4, verse 12. And so they're now going to the one person who has the power to go to the king. And who would that be? The queen. And the queen could only enter to the king's chambers if he called her. Chapter 4. They told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told them the reply to Esther, because Esther's like, I can't do anything about this. He hasn't called me. I'm the queen. And so Mordecai, her stepfather, the one who adopted her, said to her, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. So he says to Esther, you don't get to tap out on this one. That if you don't take a stand, if you, the only one, the queen, who has authority and a way to get to the king, if you don't stand up for what is right, God will still deliver the Jews, but you will not be delivered. Pretty direct statement by her adopted father. So, and then he says these words. And these words are famous. Books have been written about these words. And these words matter to all of us who are called by God to be used by God. He says in the end of verse 14, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? He says to her, maybe this is the reason you've been created. Maybe God has placed you in this place, has made you tall and beautiful and attractive. Maybe he's placed you to the king to save the Jews from destruction. Every one of us who's been chosen by God as an ambassador of Jesus, we will have those moments, such a time as this, where it is up to us to take a stand, up to us to speak what is right and true and honorable, regardless of our perceived outcome. Because this is what she says, verse 15. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf. And do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Mordecai then went away and did everything Esther had ordered him. Now, we're going to stop the story here today, but this is an important piece of this puzzle. She was considering the fact that indeed maybe God had placed her there, but she didn't, unlike the king who made rash decisions because he was being influenced others, mostly when he was drunk. She called the people to a 3-day fast to seek God, to make sure that what she was about to do was God inspired. And then she says she knows that if she enters the king's chambers into the courtyard without being called, she could be executed immediately. That's the Persian way. But she says at the end, if you fast 3 days, then she will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and most likely I'm going to die. And they did fast. And tomorrow we'll find out some more of the story. So what do we take away from this? We take away the fact that even though God is not mentioned in the book of Esther, God is everywhere in the book of Esther. You've got bad leadership by a drunken king. You have Jews who are living in a Persian environment that doesn't serve the one true God. You have a opportunity where a girl who would have no place to be queen suddenly is raised up to a position of queen, who has hid her Jewish heritage to be there. You have the enemy who despises God's people and who wants to destroy God's people, and he himself is living in his own glory. He is the most important person in the room, and he expects everyone to bow down before him. His pride is how he could be described. And then Mordecai, a man who loves God, who adopted an orphan girl, who takes the courageous step of asking a great favor of her. And then, of course, Esther, who faces life and death for the benefit of others. She could easily not just lose her queenship, but her life. It's all about selfless courage, about divine dedication. And we have to ask ourselves, are we those kind of people? When Jesus died on the cross and rose again, and we came to him and we were born again, will we be like the disciples and receive the gift of the Holy Spirit and then walk in that gifting? Will we walk as ambassadors of Christ? Will we practice divine dedication and selfless courage? Will we say the things we're supposed to say to the people to which we're supposed to say them? Even though it may cost us a friendship, may cost us influence, it may cost us money, may cost us a job, it could cost us our life. How far are we willing to go to be the ambassadors of Jesus? And are we born for such a time as this? Well, hope that inspires you today. Keep on keeping on. We'll finish up this story next couple days. I look forward to it. It's good to be back with you. And by the way, we're coming into the holiday season. Just know I'm praying for you. I love you. I know being with family can be intense. And if you have no family, it can be lonely. So I'm just going to pray that God will bless you through this whole Christmas, New Year's season. Love you all. See you tomorrow morning at what time? 7:47. What do you do now? Hit the like button before you go. There you go. Hit that little like button before you go. And we'll see you tomorrow morning.